In June 2025, the Middle East entered a massive military escalation known as the 12-Day War, a conflict driven to neutralize a single subterranean threat. By May of that year, Iran had secretly accumulated over 440 kilograms of uranium, enriched to 60%. Enrichment is the industrial process of increasing the concentration of uranium-235, the specific isotope required to trigger a nuclear chain reaction. While civilian power plants typically require only 3 to 5% enrichment, 60% material is just a short technical step away from the 90% threshold needed for a weapon. This small gap meant that Iran's stockpile had no plausible civilian justification. Simultaneously, U.S.-brokered diplomatic negotiations in Oman collapsed. The failure of these talks removed all non-kinetic options from the table. To Israel, this massive accumulation of enriched material represented an immediate existential threat that required a kinetic solution. While Western intelligence knew the location of the uranium, leaching it presented a staggering engineering challenge. The primary target was the Fordo enrichment facility. As shown in this satellite imagery, the site was constructed nearly 90 meters deep inside the solid bedrock of the Zagros Mountains. Inside these mountains lay massive centrifuge halls. A centrifuge is a high-speed spinning machine used to isolate uranium-235 isotopes necessary for nuclear weapons. Despite its advanced air force, Israel lacked the heavy, earth-penetrating munitions required to punch through 90 meters of solid rock. Between the extreme depth of the Zagros Mountains and the limitations of Israel's weapons, these enriched uranium stocks remained unreachable by standard military means. On June 13, 2025, Israeli F-35 stealth jets penetrated Iranian airspace to launch the first strikes of the 12-Day War. Israel's immediate tactical goal was the systematic destruction of Iran's air defense grid, specifically targeting Russian-supplied S-300 missile batteries. The operation succeeded, giving the Israeli Air Force total air dominance over Iranian territory. However, even with control of the skies, Israeli bombs could only damage surface structures. The buried centrifuges remained functional deep underground. Israel's air campaign successfully blinded Iran's radar and missile batteries, effectively opening a corridor for the heavier Allied strikes to follow. On June 22nd, the United States intervened directly with an assault designated Operation Midnight Hammer. This mission required the B-2 stealth bomber, the only aircraft in the world capable of carrying the massive payload necessary to crack the Iranian facilities. That payload was the GBU-57 Massive Ordnance Penetrator, or MOP. The MOP is a 30,000-pound precision-guided bomb designed specifically to reach targets deep underground. Dropped from high altitude, the MOP uses its massive weight and kinetic energy to drill through 70 meters of earth and concrete. A smart fuse detects voids, allowing it to punch through the ceiling and detonate inside the centrifuge halls. This satellite view shows the extent of the damage across the facility footprint. Debris fields and collapsed shafts indicate that the munitions successfully breached the underground complex. The United States used brute kinetic force to overcome Iran's geographic defenses, seemingly neutralizing the immediate nuclear threat. Tactical reports initially confirmed the success. The damage to Natanz and Fordo set Iran's nuclear timeline back by at least 1 to 2 years. However, over 400 kilograms of the enriched uranium remains unaccounted for. Intelligence now suggests Iran evacuated the material to secret locations before the American bombers arrived. Tehran is already shifting resources into a new, even deeper facility, known as Pickaxe Mountain, to house its remaining stocks. Domestically, the regime remained stable. The strikes actually consolidated power for the Iranian leadership and generated transnational sympathy across the region. The military success left behind a defiant regime that still holds the raw material for a bomb, but is now moving its operations entirely out of view of international inspectors. For decades, Iran utilized a strategy of latent capability, holding all the components of a nuclear weapon without actually building one, to gain diplomatic leverage. Operation Midnight Hammer proved that merely holding the potential for a bomb is not enough to deter a preemptive strike. Tehran is now incentivized to cross the final threshold into full weaponization, to ensure that U.S. bunker busters cannot threaten the regime again. This shift is already spreading. Regional rivals like Saudi Arabia are now reconsidering their own security needs, potentially seeking their own nuclear deterrence to balance the new reality. The attempt to eliminate a nuclear Iran through overwhelming military force has incentivized Tehran to build a weaponized arsenal, potentially triggering a broader nuclear arms race across the Middle East.